You don't need to be an economist to understand what's actually driving inflation. A lot of things influence inflation, but over time, inflation is determined by the size of your money supply. If you have a lot of something, it becomes less valuable. It's that simple. That's why we have inflation. And over time, you can destroy your currency. So our government, bipartisan coalition, over time has printed more money in the last couple of years than in the past 100 years. And that has destroyed the power of the U.S. dollar. China is watching this. China would like to make a run on the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. And so they're working to do that. China just announced a partnership with Argentina, in part on currency. Argentina's president also said his nation would join China's Belt and Road project. Again, that's in our hemisphere. Monroe Doctrine, anyone, but it's happening, and nobody's even mentioning it. And it's not just Argentina. 19 other Latin American and Caribbean countries are part of this Chinese-led initiative. So China isn't just growing influence in this hemisphere. Vladimir Putin just signed a deal with China, a new gas supply deal. So you have to wonder, what are the implications for American power, particularly American economic power, particularly the power of the U.S. dollar, on which everything else depends? Lonnie Chen is a candidate for the comptroller of the state of California, and we are honored to have him join us tonight. Lonnie Chen, thanks so much for coming on. I don't hear anyone talking about this, but I think it's worth being worried about it. Are you worried about it?
Yeah, I am worried about it. Look, the goal that China has is to use its currency to supplant the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency, and they're able to do that essentially because in the United States, we've made a series of policy decisions that frankly erode the power of the dollar, erode our ability to have influence around the world, and I think that's the biggest challenge we face. You mentioned the Belt and Road Initiative. The way that essentially China gains influence is to go into countries to finance projects not with equity but with debt. They essentially put countries in a debt trap, and then at some point, if the country is unable to repay the loan, they take the asset. Great example, the power grid in Laos is owned by China because essentially they extended a loan, the company went under, and they took the power grid. You see this all over the world, Tucker.
Yes, particularly in Africa. You're seeing American companies here, municipalities, sign deals with Chinese companies controlled by the Chinese government. I heard about one today in which the Chinese were demanding they import their workers to work on the project. Why aren't American politicians awake to this, I wonder?
Well, not only are they not awake to it, but they keep adding to the problem. You wonder why there's inflation in the United States. When you put $6 trillion of fiscal stimulus into the economy, as President Biden and Democrats did last year, you're going to end up with big-time inflation. Unfortunately, that's what we're seeing. It's eroding the purchasing power of people here in the United States. People who are still making more money now are not making more money to keep up with inflation. It's placing great pressure on families throughout our country. So the challenges we face really, unfortunately, Tucker, are self-inflicted. And I don't know how we're going to get out of this unless we have a massive course correction when it comes to economic policy in this country.
Why aren't you running the Federal Reserve? I mean, you seem to understand this in a way that Powell doesn't, that none of the governors do. Lonnie Chen, I appreciate your coming on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker.